The most ambitious conservation project ever undertaken by the Society was the program they embarked on in 1986 to preserve the unique English handmade wallpapers in the Lee Mansion. The wallpapers are believed to have been painted by the firm of William Spire in London and installed shortly after the mansion was built in 1768. This is the only set of such wall coverings still in place in the house for which they were designed. The richly decorated papers contain 18 scenes adapted from the works of Giovanni Panini, Pierre-Antoine de Machy, Joseph Vernet, and Jean-Jacques Laveau, and are painted to resemble elaborately framed pictures. Early undated photographs of the front hall, which appear to have been made prior to 1909, show considerable damage and loss, especially in the areas above the wainscot. After the Society assumed ownership of the building, Thomas Pittman of Marblehead was hired to work on the paper. When the Neptune panel in the parlor chamber was removed during the 1980s conservation, his signature and the date 1909 were written on the plaster wall. Indications are that sometime between 1909 and 1911, the badly deteriorated papers were removed from the lower hall, and Mr. Pittman painted the walls with cartouches, leaving 2 panels of the original wallpaper intact over the doors to the parlor and the hall. It is possible patches made in the hall chamber papers were done at this time to cover areas of loss and patches where gas fixtures had been removed. In 1929, William Young, who was later to work on another wallpaper project while heading the research department at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, supervised a treatment program of the papers. It consisted of using a spray for overall consolidation, re-adhering tears, and retouching. After the treatment was finished, large sheets of glass were placed over the papers along the staircase, the upper hall, and the parlor chamber. At the Society's invitation in 1964, Abbot Lowell Cummings, who was head of the Society for the Preservation of New England Antiquities, visited the mansion to advise how best to restore the lower hall, painted by Thomas Pittman. He felt that by that time the painted walls had become part of the history of the house, and the restoration should reflect Pittman's treatment. It's regrettable that little documentation exists of the very early efforts to preserve the wallpapers. Only references to them that we get are letters, memory, some people remember, and also a few mentions of it in board meeting minutes. By the 1980s, the papers, some of the most valuable furnishings in the mansion, were deteriorating rapidly. Experts were consulted, and on their recommendation, the Society hired the Northeast Document Conservation Center to do the work on the Lee Mansion papers. Work on the restoration project began after the mansion closed for the season in October 1986, with T.K. McClintock of the Document Center as chief conservator. Phase 1 involved 2 rooms, the parlor chamber and the hall chamber. It was found that the hall chamber papers were somewhat less severely damaged and could be treated on site, but the 8 panels of paper in the parlor chamber had to be gingerly removed and taken to the studios of the Northeast Document Conservation Center for repair and backing. Phases 2 and 3 consisted of the hall, staircase, and landing areas. Almost all of the wallpaper conservation was done in the fall and winter, when the mansion was closed, with one notable exception. Much to the delight of the staff and visitors, work on the staircase landing was done from scaffolding while the mansion was open for tours. In contrast with earlier restorations, the conservation program done by the Northeast Document Conservation Center has been photographed and recorded in meticulous detail, giving future conservators a reliable base of information. The 1986 to 1990 conservation and restoration program stabilized the original English wallpapers. A maintenance fund was established to ensure their continuing care. The papers are carefully examined on a regular basis and are treated at once to keep them in optimum condition. The importance of the handmade English wallpapers in the Lee Mansion cannot be overstated. It's remarkable that they have stayed on the walls of this house, considering its use, for over 200 years.